Hey everyone, my name is Jerome Foster II, and I'm the executive director and founder of 1 Million of Us. And I'm so excited for you all to join us for this live stream with the cast of the award-winning documentary film, Boys State. Today, we're going to have a conversation about their experience in the Texas Boys State program and why civic engagement and civic education is so important for young people and the power of the youth vote. So I'll hand it off to Benjamin. Can you introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm Ben Feinstein. I'm a student at Southern Methodist University in Dallas studying international studies and history, and I'm trying to learn Russian, and I'm super excited to be here.
Awesome.
Hey Jerome, thanks for having me. I'm Steven Garza. I'm a second-year student at the University of Texas at Austin. I am majoring in government, and I'm also really excited to be here.
Phenomenal. So can you tell us a little bit about Boys State and what your role was in the program?
Yeah, for sure. So Boys State is a program in every single state of the union where a bunch of rising seniors in high school are selected by this organization called the American Legion, which has long been an organization standing for, democratic principles, veterans protections, and a number of other things. They select a bunch of rising seniors and you go to the Capitol for a week in the summer and you do like a big mock government. And while I was there, I was the leader of one of the two major political parties.
Awesome.
Yeah, Ben, he hit it on the nail. I myself in the film am running for the highest position at Texas Boys State, the position of governor.
And does Boys State only happen in Texas, or does it happen like across the country? And like these are just some questions that I feel like other people that don't know about Boys State, like does it only happen in Texas? Is it only for boys? Like just break down some of the norms that are there.
Yeah, so it happens in every single state. Every state does it differently. Like they'll do it at different times and there will be different rules. Like I know one state has I think Alabama Boys State has like assassinations of political figures, which is nice. But Texas Boys State did not. But yeah, you can anywhere where you live with the exception of I think Hawaii has Boys State. So
cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, and not just Boys State, they do have the American Legion Auxiliary Girls State, which is the exact same program, basically operating under the same rules as their counterpart throughout every state, again, except in the state of Hawaii, I believe. So it's it's been going on for a very long time. 1937, I believe, is when the first Boys State program was founded, and it's considered one of the more selective and prestigious programs to get into in the States. I mean, a lot of people go because it looks good on the college resume. Me and Ben go because we're nerds and we thought it'd be an amazing opportunity to be in this little Stanford prison experiment of politics.
Yeah, I don't know if this is true, but I read on the Wikipedia article for Boys State after going that a Boys State nomination is equivalent to Eagle Scout, but I can't.
Wow.
But it's prestigious and it means a lot.
And with that prestige, like, how did that impact your experience there? Like, how did that impact you as a student or like an activist going through the program and being able to have that experience as young people learning about the political process?
I mean, it was huge for me, not so much as an activist, but more as a patriot and an American and a citizen, because you're in this mock environment with 1,000 other people from, every corner of Texas, every, economic strata, every political viewpoint on the spectrum. You're all, living together, playing together, working together, eating together, attending the same presentations. And that's common sense of community and these common values that rise way above any difference that may be between us. And this bond that forms, this bond that forms around principles like freedom of speech and, equal rights for all. And the fact that, America is something to be proud of. And it really strengthens all of it. And it feels really, really good. And it's kind of a preview into how, democracy can and to an extent should work.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree with that in both a patriot and an activist. It's where else are you going to get an opportunity to basically run a mock political campaign for a week? You're really surrounded by people you've never met in your entire life. There's 1,000 of you guys, all ambitious, all very smart. What I love about the program is that they right off the bat tell the statesmen there that some of you have gone your entire life being a success and you have never lost anything once. Well, let me tell you, for all of you who run for office, half of you are going to lose. more than half are you going to lose. And that's life, you know. I think it's an amazing opportunity to kind of see on the surface level, do you have what it takes to be able to thrive in a political environment like that? Can you organize coalitions? Can you give a good speech? Can you hold your own in a debate? Those are all very invaluable things for somebody like me who wants to continue pursuing electoral politics professionally. Texas Boys State gave me that first taste of it, and it's you know, something that you can't you know, replace unless you're actually doing the real thing.
Yeah, you guys talk about like how there was like thousands of people there. There was, you had to build coalitions, you had to build speeches and work with each other. How do you reach out to all those people? Like, how do you use social media? How do you use digital platforms to reach out to all the other people that are in these conventions to really build the brand that you have?
Well, I mean, I think that social media, especially on my side, and I'm not going to spoil the documentary, but you know, if you watch it, you will see that it was important. And we did not, I'll be real, we did not always use it in the most productive, healthy manner. But you know, it still matters and it's real. But I think that there's very few things that can replace a human connection. There's very few things that can replace a handshake and a smile and confidence and trust and a speech given to an audience. And as state party chair, again and again, I had to, you know, articulate a policy clearly, appeal to common values, appeal to a common mission, and really focus my group around this idea that like, we didn't know each other a week ago. You know, we didn't know each other even existed, let alone that we were going to be doing this. And we're all in this together. And, you know, we got to get with the program or we're not going to win. And yeah, forging that and, you know, just everything. It was difficult. It was challenging, but it was extremely rewarding. And I created a very tight organization.
I think in my own personal experience at Boys State, my party didn't really utilize social media as much, but again, without giving anything away, social media kind of really becomes the, you know, a flashpoint in the film of the events that transpire because of my social media activity, which, you know, it sounds like a bad thing, right? It sounds like, oh, what kind of scandal that came up. You know, I was very proud of the activity, but it put me at odds with other people's beliefs in the program. So what I thought was fascinating, I went back to the program as a counselor in 2019 and again in 2020 alongside with Ben. And I don't know if you remember, Ben, but the Nationalist Party had a very beautiful Instagram page, a beautiful it was so good that they had to put a disclaimer that said that this was not a real political party. You know, it was so, the graphics were beautiful. It was all uniform. It was amazing. And because of it being actually done over WebEx, which is basically another version of Zoom, everything was virtual. And so social media was imperative in order for you to actually run for office in our virtual Texas Boys State program this past year. And the Nationalists absolutely, for disclaimer, at Texas Boys State, we don't use, you know, contemporary political parties like Democrats or Republicans. They're actually divided into two fictitious parties called the Federalist Party and the Nationalist Party. They're divided up evenly and randomly, and it's up to them to decide what those parties actually stand for. So in times of COVID, with everything like that, it was really amazing to see them utilize platforms like Instagram to really get their campaign message out, to share information and voting, to share interviews with candidates, platforms, things that were going on within their party. Much better, in my opinion, than the other party had, who also had an Instagram at the time, but didn't utilize it to the extent that they probably should have, which actually ended up costing them all the basically all the top spots in the program went to the party that was the most organized online.
No, yeah, and it's a common trend because in our year of Boys State, you know, the Federalist Party social media was made by one of my best friends, like one guy, right, sitting in his room chugging Red Bulls until 4 a.m, making memes on his phone. And you know, the Nationalists barely had anything, and you know, we had like more social media, so we won. And then I think the DNA has trickled down to where now we're on like Gen 3 of social media being a really big part of Boys State. And it's not just guys on their phones in their dorm rooms after a long day in the Texas summer. It's like COVID and quarantine and people on their desktops and towers with like Photoshop and all this crazy stuff. And yeah, I mean, Stephen did it perfectly. Like social media, especially right now, to communicate any kind of message is like imperative.
Yeah, like the use of social media was like phenomenal from the work you guys did. And I think that also with real campaigns, there's also like grassroots and like reaching out to the constituents, reaching out to the people that are part of the team. Like, how did that play a role in it? Why are you guys able to reach out and really form the policies that were the Federalists and the Nationalists and come up with those ideas?
I think one of the most valuable lessons I learned as someone leading a really big organization was trust and dedicating duties out. Whether you're a leader in your club or, in your organization or your activist group or anything, like you cannot do everything by yourself and you shouldn't try to. And a very important skill that I learned immediately was I have all these people under me who are smart, super capable, super willing to help, able to. And the best thing I can do is to delegate out and let them do what they're best at and figure it out. And your job as a leader, and what I viewed my job as a leader was to bring out the best in everyone under me for the common good. And to get a message out and to get an organization of any size working, let alone one that's like a 500-person political party of 17-year-old boys, like you have to be able to see the clearer picture and get everyone on the same page. And that's the job of central leadership. But then once that page is there, you need to let the branches under, do it with independence and do it how they do it best.
Yeah. So again, Ben's Federalist Party was a lot more organized and in line than the Nationalists, which does play a role in the elections. As you watch the film, you see that my party, my Nationalist Party, which is so weird to say that in a non-Boy State context, but the party that I represented, there was some inner turmoil between some of the people within the party and some of the people in leadership positions, which you see unfold in the film. Our message wasn't really that communicative. And at the end of the day, really, the political parties at Boy State were basically almost exactly the same ideologically in their platforms. Very kind of moderate, but more a little bit to the right, just because they're really trying not to alienate the other party from their platform. You're never really going to I don't think there'll ever be a Boy State where one party is the liberal party and one party is the conservative party. That being said, when both parties are identical, it really comes down to who can kind of get the better messaging out for their actual candidates who are running. And I think the Federalists did a really good job of utilizing social media in a way that the Nationalist Party didn't do, which probably affected the outcome of a couple of races in the program.
For sure. Yeah. And I mean, I think equally as important as social media is articulating a common message. Because I mean, something that we had through all our social media, for better or worse, was vote for us because of this, don't vote for them because of that. And, you can have all the social media and activism and Instagram posts and stories and anything in the world, but if it doesn't articulate something that like makes sense on some level, then it's harder to work, Yeah.
So you guys, let me get this straight. So you guys were able to build entire parties. You're able to give speeches. You're able to build coalitions. You're able to really create this entire mock government. And what did you learn about democracy? And what was your biggest takeaway about voting and our democracy as a whole in America?
I mean, it's important. Our system is unique in that, and this is like a very self-evident, almost like axiomatic statement. If you don't like something in our system, you have the power to vote against it. Like that, it seems like a basic thing that we all take for granted, but whether it's a president, whether it's a law, whether it's a policy, whether it's a bureaucracy, you have tons of mechanisms in the American system to say, I don't stand for this. And you alone, your vote only counts so much. But the beauty of our system is you can rally others and you can create systematic change, as everyone in this call is familiar with. And yeah, I mean, that's super important. And the freedom to do that is, super important. And it's something that we should never rest on and never take for granted and always be working to preserve and expand.
The question is, how did it kind of shape our views on democracy and kind of being involved, right?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So making sure. So it it teaches you that politics isn't easy. Coalition building isn't easy. It is very hard, in fact, and it's strenuous, it's tense, it's demoralizing, but it could also be very uplifting and motivating and inspiring to see groups of people put past their personal party identity and political ideologies to actually work with the other side, not the enemy. Because at Texas Boys State, I think a lot of people kind of realize that Federalists and Nationalists were opposing parties. They were not enemies. I mean, at the end of the day, we were all Texas boy statesmen. We're all, Americans. We all really love our state and our country for different reasons. And I don't think that it is to criticize this country. I don't think is an un-American thing to do, because there's so much to celebrate in the United States, and there's so much to do better at. And I think that's kind of the realization that a lot of people have there, that if we actually sit down with each other and we have a conversation, and we're not openly hostile to each other, but we actually take time to listen and realize that it's actually a lot more that unites us than divides us. This ends up kind of teaching us the lesson that democracy isn't a spectator sport, that we all have an active role to play in this, not just by exercising our rights to vote, but by organizing, by making sure that you're an informed electorate, by participating in democracy in many different ways other than voting.
Yeah, and as you said, Stephen, we have to be active in our democracy. And I just want to shift gears a little bit, because we are 20 days ahead of an election, and to talk about civics education a little bit. And why is it important for young people to understand how our democracy works, and why are we seeing more young people really turn out to vote this November?
Well, I mean, I think at a base level, you need to know when you're getting conned. Like, you need to know when you're getting lied to, and both sides lie frequently. It happens, because that's a lot of what politics is. A lot of politics is pushing a message, and that can be positive and that can be negative. And like, without getting into the weeds on it, it's not right for anyone in office to misrepresent or manipulate a process that's supposed to work one way, and they misrepresent it, and then you're operating on false information. And I think one of the basic things that is present in this country, and has been for a long time, is the idea that the citizenry is supposed to be educated about what's going on. Like, if you're being trusted for a vote, your nation can go to war. Your vote can mean someone pays more taxes. Your vote can mean the economy stalls. Your vote can mean anything, right? And if you're not educated on the right thing to do, or how it's done, right, you're not going to be making a decision on a solid foundation. And that's a shame for you, and it's a shame for everyone else. And I think more than that, not so much like a negative thing. It's like, our system works really, really well when everyone is on the same page about how it works. And one of the things that is very disturbing that's happening now is we're starting to lose touch with like truth in a lot of ways. And, falsehoods and lies and misrepresentations and manipulations are becoming the truth in some cases on very, very important things, like how the government works or what the government does. And that can have really real consequences for a lot of people and a lot of systems. And yeah, I mean, education, like unbiased, pure logic, fact-based education, is extremely important for the health of a system that relies on the people to participate.
Yeah, I agree with Ben. And I think to answer the second part of the question of why is it that young people are getting more involved, I think they're becoming more and more aware that in elections, and especially in this election, the kind of direction of our country, not just for the next 4 years, but for a generation, is on the ballot. It's a referendum on it's a referendum on the way things have been going, and whether we want things to continue going that way or we want to change. I think that's every election is a referendum on what's going on in the country. And I think that young people realize that the decisions being made in Washington, D.C. right now are being made by older people who won't necessarily really deal with the consequences. Whereas young people like myself, like you, Jerome, like Ben, like millions of young people are going to be dealing with consequences that have happened in the past couple of years, especially this year in 2020, for a long time. And I think that people realize that actually they have a stake in this election, that the future of their country, because it is their country as much as it is anybody else's, is at stake, is on the ballot. And it's really inspiring to see young people voice their opinions and be civically engaged, know what's going on in the world, have an opinion. I really, as a young person, it's really rare for me to find somebody who doesn't have an opinion on something that's going on in the world right now. And they're coming out in, I think, record numbers. I mean, my home in Houston, which is in Harris County, had more people come out to early vote yesterday than the entire state of Georgia, which was insane. I actually went to go vote yesterday, and I was 10th in line. I showed up 15 minutes before the polls opened, and it took me an hour and 8 minutes to leave because of some errors that people were facing in terms of machines and also registration not being found. But and a lot of kids, I saw a lot of, being right now in college, a lot of students were facing these problems, and I was watching them, and they were staying in line, making sure that they were going to be able to vote, and the people behind them would wait 20 or 30 minutes for that person to finish voting so they can go vote. It was very, very inspiring and motivating to see young people like ourselves making their voices heard in this very important election.
Yeah, and Ben, you talked a lot about truth, and Stephen, you also talked about how when we go to the polls, it's a lot of conversation about like, how do we get this done? Like, we're waiting in line for an hour. How long is it going to take for some of us? Like, some people it takes 4 or 5 hours as well. Like, I think that when we talk about civics, how are we going to change this education around it? For myself, I served on the DC State Board of Education in DC, and we revamped the high school graduation requirements of class of 2030 to include civics education as like a core subject. But like, how do you see as like, if schools aren't willing to add civics education as a core subject, how do you see young people learning about civics online or in any other platform that we can be civically informed? Because a lot of what's going on now is partisanship, and that's dividing us on what's true about how we be civically participated.
It's a very good question.
It's rare that we get stumped on a question, which means it's a really thought-provoking question. I think it's changing a lot of our attitudes about voting. I think young people are a little bit more, as inspiring as they are also pretty cynical of the system that we have in place, which leads again to, when there's no faith in politicians, then obviously people are going to come out in record numbers to vote if they feel that they're not actually being represented adequately by those who hold public office. I think it's kind of making sure that people realize that it's very important that people do not treat their one semester here in Texas, their one semester government class in high school, as something you just need to pass. I need to know what the Federalist Papers are. I need to know what gerrymandering is and take the tests and then forget about it. And okay, I took my government class and I got credit for it. It should be a continuous relationship with civics, with being involved in government. I mean, our democracy is healthier and it's safer when everybody is playing an active role in it. And I think it needs to just be more than a semester of their senior year, where they're just really trying to pass the class and graduate, not necessarily really trying to take in what they're actually learning. And I think that's part, in the greater fall of education, where the emphasis is on more or less, numbers of grades rather than the actual content that they're actually engaging with and are taking in. A whole broader problem with education all across, and education standards that vary by state. So.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. And I completely agree with Stephen on it. Like, civics shouldn't be something that you think of as just a requirement or, a prereq or whatever. If you don't have access to it, read. I think you would be surprised at the number of people who, are governed by the Constitution but have never read the Constitution. And I think that's totally reasonable. The Constitution's long, it's an old language, it's kind of boring, right? But like at the end of the day, like if you want to learn about how the country's supposed to work, reading the founding, documents of the country is a good place to start. And, stuff like the Federalist Papers and, the Declaration of Independence. And it's like there's lots of material out there for like, if you want to get a good pulse on things, but I mean, also read criticisms of it, because there, as all of us are familiar with, there is a very big difference between how things are supposed to work and how things do work in actuality. And I think that's one of the most inspiring things about what's happening right now is the emphasis on personal education and growth through education and reading and exposing yourself to different opinions is huge right now. And that shouldn't just apply to something like racial justice. That should apply to everything. And yeah, I don't know. I think personal initiative, like you can gain a lot if you put your mind to it.
Yeah, and as a final question, as we wrap up these last few minutes, we have a question from the chat. But in preface to that, a lot of the work that's going on right now is trying to get young people to be civically engaged and trying to unite us as a nation. So what do you have, what message do you have to young people or as a nation as a whole as we move forward? Moving forward, what should our nation look like as we continue to organize? Like, there's so many ways we can do that. And like, what is your message to young people? I messed up that question a little bit. Let me rephrase it.
I think you phrased it perfectly fine.
Yeah.
I think that
cool.
Me and Ben were a little bit stuck on the just thinking about it.
Yeah.
I think there are many ways to contribute to your democracy, and not only that, but to your community, and that could just be very well going to vote. And I'm actually aware that there are younger people who aren't able to vote that are civically engaged. I was one of them. At 14 years old, I went to my first political rally. By the time I was able to vote, I had interned for a state representative race. I had worked for a congressional race, a Senate race, a state representative race. Organized the March for Our Lives Houston. Went to Boise State. Spoke at the TDB convention, and all of this before I was able even to cast my ballot. There are many ways you can actually participate in democracy. It's considering going back to a world pre-pandemic where it's going to your local school board meeting or your city council meeting. It's reading things like the newspaper or things on your phone. Their daily briefing that I get every morning from the news that I read through or listen to on some kind of device. It's going to a candidate forum. It's volunteering to be an election worker, poll worker, which again is not again beneath anyone. I mean, yesterday my poll worker had actually seen Boise State, which is very funny to me. And so she then introduced herself after I finished voting and said, "Nice to meet you. I'm Nicole. I'm Lyndon B. Johnson's granddaughter." And I'm like, "You're poll working. You're the president's granddaughter, and you're poll working." And she's like, "Yeah, she said, I thought of what he would want, and I feel like this is something as a way for me to give back to the community." It's imperative on everyone all across this country to take a role to make sure that democracy is healthy and functions. Because if we don't, then we're going to end up with politicians who we don't have faith in, with a broken system, with laws we don't like, with a broken democracy. And a broken democracy is not a democracy at all.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that's kind of a tangent. I was actually going to be doing poll work if I was still living in North Carolina, which I'm not for other reasons. But yeah, everything Steven said is totally true. And I think in your day-to-day life, I really believe that a lot of the reason why we have a lot of tension is because we're all kind of ratcheted up to 11 right now. And to an extent, we should be ratcheted up because things are happening in this country that are not okay. And you shouldn't just sit by and be okay with it if you don't feel it's okay. But I also feel like on social media, on like TikTok, on Twitter, on, the streets, on just, the average forum, some of the amount of toxicity and vitriol that gets thrown around very routinely from both sides does not contribute to a healthy atmosphere where we're able to look at the other side as like an American and a fellow patriot and a fellow citizen, and instead we look at them as the enemy. And I just think it is very important for the health of our system and for us all to just get along and coexist and make it work, which is what we have to do at the end of the day. Like, I think we have to tone it back a little. And I think living your political life and kind of your life in general with a sense of forgiveness and understanding, and always being willing to give someone the benefit of the doubt, or, the ability to admit that you might be wrong and not the other person. Like, humility is huge in a system where we all have to work and make it work and compromise. And yeah.
I just want to thank both of you guys for taking the time out of your busy schedule, I'm sure, for having a conversation with us. I'm pretty sure a lot of young people are going to take a lot from these messages and powerful words that you guys spoke today. And just want to say that's a wrap. Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. It was great having you guys. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you for having us, Jerome, and thank you, XQ, for hosting this.